Welcome everyone to this mini-series about agentic engineering, specifically with Svelte. Now, in the previous episode, we started setting up our agent. We choose OpenCode as our daily driver. We set up the Svelte MCP. In this episode, we're going to explore two more tools that are part of the tool belt of our agent. Specifically, we're going to talk about skills and we're going to talk about Subagents. Both of these were mostly created to save context, which, as we will learn, is basically the most precious resource in our agentic workflow. Before we begin, a small presentation is due. I am Paolo Ricciuti. I lead the Svelte team at Mainmatter, which is an engineering consultancy that focuses on Svelte, Rust, Ember, and we help our clients through their toughest challenges or with adopting technology in the first place. But most importantly, we help a lot of our clients to set up their system so that their engineer could ship code faster without compromising on quality. And this is basically what we are doing nowadays with AI. We basically use the same engineering techniques to keep our agents in check so that we can get the productivity boost that the AI can give us without losing code quality. So let's jump right into today's episode and let's see how skills and Subagent can help our agent work better. So let's open OpenCode. And this should give us our MCP server. So like if we do status, we have a bunch of MCP server that I've disabled. And then we have the Svelte one, which is the only one that is connected because it's in our configuration. So let me ask here. And now let's actually start generating something. So this is the status of our application for the moment, which is basically the initial template for a Svelte Git application. What we want to do is let's start first by let Claude generate one design. And we're gonna talk about something else once we figure out this, but let's ask Claude to generate one design. Your news on top. A way to go to your source document, and then a series of articles with a small summary and the link to the actual article. Build the design in a space of Svelte. We are using Claude Opus 4.6. Let's launch this prompt and let's see what Claude can come up with. So. As you can see, we already have run the Svelte autofixer on the component as a step, which is good because we now have provided the model with the autofixer, and yeah, I think it's good. Now, issue found, let me mark it as completed. And now we can actually go and see how the design looks like. So if we open the page, it is basically what we need, but it's not visually interesting. It's not it's a very blunt page. At least it got the spacing right in the sense that it's not spanning over the whole page, but yeah, it's, to be fair, not that great. So how can we make Claude better at design? Well, there is another thing that Anthropic developed and added to Claude and then released as a spec, and it's the skill spec. So what I'm talking about is these agent skills. So what are skills? Skills are a lightweight, open format for extensive AI capabilities with specialized knowledge and workflows. So basically, skills are sort of like an MCP server in the sense that They also allows you to add context and knowledge to the model after the training phase. And they look something like this. So you have like the name of the skill, and then you have a skill.md file, and then you can add either some reference, which is extra documentation, or some scripts, which is some code that you can run, or some assets. So like it's a folder with this information here. And skills also got very, very popular. So nowadays, basically it's skills and MCP, like are the two main, I wouldn't say competing specs. A lot of people are actually saying that those are competing. Like skills effectively can kind of replace an MCP server. There is already a Svelte skill that can technically replace the MCP server, because if you don't know about it, but the MCP server package, which is called @svelte.js/MCP, is also a CLI. So if I go here and I open a new page and I go to CD stuff and news aggregator, CD, I can run npx svelte.js/mcp at latest, and I get the help function. So this is how you can use the Svelte.js MCP at latest CLI. So this is the npm package for the MCP server. So if I run it without anything, this is now running the MCP server, and it's listening for on the standard in and standard out. But if I want, I can also run it as a CLI. So I can run this function. For example, I can say list sections. And if I run it, you can see that I get back the same list that we have to get the information. Let's say that I want to get documentation for the key. The path is what I need, a Svelte key. And so if I want, now I can do get documentation. I can pass in Svelte key, and now I get the documentation for the key block. So this is basically a CLI that your agent can use instead of the MCP server if they want. However, there is a small issue here, which is how do the agent knows that the CLI is available? How do the agent knows how to use it? Because I can also use the autofixer. So like I can say Svelte autofixer, and if I do help here, you can see that I need to pass either the code or the path, and then I can pass the async if the project is using async, and the Svelte version. So technically, the agent could use the help function to learn how to use the CLI, but there is a better way, because as we were talking, there are skills available, and the skills can teach new things to your agent. And so we can see that we have a few skills available, and one of the skill is the Svelte code writer. And this basically gives your agent knowledge about how to use the Svelte MCP CLI, how you can use the get documentation, how you can use the autofixer, and it gives some example, and it gives some important bit about when passing code with runes via the terminal, escape the $sign character to prevent shell variable substitution and stuff like that. So these are very small things, but if you want, you can use this skill plus the CLI to save context. So this episode will be all about saving context. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because like skills are generally considered a way to save context. Now, what is the problem? When you run the MCP server, you get a lot of information inside the context that you might not need. And that's why, for example, I said, usually I keep my MCP disabled, and I only enable them either in the project directly or when I'm actually needing them. And the reason is that like they will fill your context with the description of the tool, the arguments of the tool, and even if you don't use them, they already fill the context with that information. Skills kind of solve this problem. The reason is that if we open this and we see the skill context, the agent doesn't get the content of the skill, it only gets the title and the description, and then you can either reference a skill directly or the agent will know to read the skill based on context. How do you get the skill in your project? It depends. For example, if we go to the open code documentation, you can put a skill inside your project. So you can have an open code folder with skills, name, and skill.md. There is a global configuration. So if you can put it in .config, open code skills, name of the skill. They also have a compatibility layer with Claude, and it's also agent compatible. So like this is the specific folder for open code, but a lot of the MCP clients actually like teamed up and said, okay, let's say that we all read from agents.skill/skills so that we don't have to have 200 separate folders for 200 separate clients. So that's a nice thing. So it's up to you where you want to put your skill, but there is an even easier way to install a skill, and it's with skills.sh. So this is a project from Vercel, and they have basically this npm CLI, which is add, and then you can just add owner/repo. So in this case, if you want to add the Svelte repo, you can just do svelte.js/AI tools. And this will give you a list of all the skills that you can add. And you can select the one that you want. If you want to use the skill like this Svelte Code Writer CLI instead of the MCP, this can save you some context. Now, that said, the Svelte MCP server is not really heavy in terms of descriptions. From what I've seen, I see that like the models, for the moment at least, are much more keen to invoke a tool from the MCP than a CLI. So personally, I will continue to use the Svelte MCP until skills get a better support from the models. However, the reason why we started talking about this is for a different reason, and the skill that I want to like gift you, especially if you are like me and you don't have a designer in your life, there is this skill, which is the front-end design from Anthropic itself. So this front-end design skill, it's a very simple skill. Like I think it is 20 lines of code, like it's nothing too big. But at least from what I found, this really changes the game in terms of what you get in terms of design. So let's actually see how we can add it. So we can go back here, we can clear everything. We can use this command, so npx add skills add. You can post either a whole link to GitHub or just the owner/repo, and then you can select a specific skill, in this case a front-end design, or you cannot. And if you don't select a specific skill, it will actually give you a list. So if I do this, it will clone the repo and figure out which skills are available. So in this case, there is like the Claude API, which allows you to work with the Claude API. There are some document skills. There are some example skills, in this case, the algorithmic art, brand guidelines, canvas design, doc co-authoring. There's some issue with the rendering, but what we want is we want the front-end design skill. So we can go ahead, and this will prompt us to select whatever client we want. and by default it will add the universal one, so the .agents/skills, which is always included. And this is basically prompting us like, what else do you want to add? We don't care because we only care for open code, which is already included here. So we can go ahead, and now it's asking us if we want to install it in the project or globally. Let's do it in the project for the moment. So it's also asking if we want to add like a symlink. So there is a single source of truth for the skill, and then it's symlinked to all the other agents folder, or if we want to copy to all the agents. Now we only have once, so it should not be a problem, but in general symlinking will be better because there's a single source of truth. So let's do symlink, and yeah, so proceed with the installation. Yes, done. Okay, so we now have our skill. So if we switch back to our VS Code editor, it should be inside .agents, skills, front-end design. And if you take a look at the skill.md, this is how a skill look like. So it's a very simple file. There is a name, front-end design, a description, create distinctive production grade front-end interfaces with high design quality. Use this skill when the user asks to build web component, pages, artifact, posters, or applications. So this is basically all the model will get as context, and the actual skill, which is again 43 lines, which is a description of what you should avoid to build good interfaces. It's only fed to the model once they actually have something to do with the skill. So now if we do skills, we can see that we have this front-end design skill. Now, how you activate a skill? Well, you can either mention it inside your prompt, and the agent should generally invoke it. If you want to be 100% sure, some clients, like OpenCode, also give you the ability to call the skills as a prompt. So what you can do is that you can say /skills front-end design, and then we can say, can you redesign plus page.svelte to make it look actually good. Okay, so in this moment, we are basically just using the skill to teach Claude how to properly design something. So like this is giving Claude some directives on how a good design looks like. And now he's gonna basically take whatever he wrote before and redesign it. It should hopefully look better. Let's see. It should be finished. So we already have the client working. So let's actually see for the first time how the design that Claude came up with looks like. And would you look at that? Like, do you remember how it was before? So obviously, like, maybe it's not the best design yet. Maybe you don't want to go with this design anyway, but I would say that in terms of quality, like, it is a nice design, right? Now, this is nice, and it's a way to validate your design. There is a problem though. What if there is a better design for this? Something that I found very interesting to do, that I stole from Theo, is to tell the agent to provide multiple variations of the same design, and then you can choose between the ones. So let's actually go ahead and try to do this very thing. Now, one thing that I want to talk about is you see here, like this is a number that you should always have under control when you're developing with AI, because this is the context. So right now we have 1/3 of the context that's full. Now consider that when you reach like 80%, models start to be much dumber, unfortunately. But it's something that you need to keep in mind. Like you need to watch that. And so we built this thing. We could continue to talk about this in this very chat. But since we want to build 5 new designs, let's actually create a new chat from scratch. Okay, so we now changed our initial prompt a bit. So we're still saying to the agent, I want to build a design for the application. You can use fake news. The design should be a single page when there is a title, your news on the top, a way to go to your source management, and a series of articles with a small summary, the link to the actual article. Please use the front-end design skill. So we are telling explicitly to use the front-end design skill. This is something that I've noticed you basically have to do at this point. So while technically the model should be loading the skill whenever it feels like, I found that most of the time you actually need to specifically mention the skill if you want it to activate, to build 5 different designs in 5 different routes. So this basically allows the model to create more ideas that you can validate. And most importantly, given that you give it a batch of like 5 different designs, the model will and should try to make them as different as possible so that you can actually have a much better story picking between. Each design should be unique, blah, 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 blah. Let's go. Okay, so Claude just finished building our 5 single-page designs. We can see that 1 is brutalist, 2 is organic, 3 is terminal. For some reason, the front-end design skill always love to build a terminal. Luxury editorial and geometric maximalist. It also put like each one in a single design, and there is 1 single button to explore the variations. So should be here. Okay, as you can see, like this was the first design that Claude built before, and so now we have these 5 different variations. So if we click on brutalist, we should have like a very different design. That this is how to manage sources. This does look like a news article, so I think it's pretty nice. It has this technology 2 hours ago. It has this nice selection. Okay, so let's move to organic. Okay, that's also pretty interesting. So like this is more calm, I would say. But you can see how it's very different from the one before. It has these read more. I think it's pretty nice. Let's see something else. Terminal. Again, for some reason, I don't know why, but the AIs always love to have some terminal UI. Imagine your mother looking at this website. They're probably just gonna say like, what even is this thing? But it is nice. Like if it was just tech, I would probably use it. Luxury. So this is more similar to the first one. I don't know if I like it. And geometric. I don't completely dislike the geometric nature, but this is very bad. There's also this thing here that like this sort of marquee. I would say that probably this is a bit better. The second one is also a bit better. I would love to see a version of these two that adapts well to dark mode. I want to see a comparison between the first two brutalist and organic with light and dark mode. I think I slightly lean over the brutalist one. Like I really like this style, especially for news. I wonder if that can be a bit harsh on the eye, like you should read something. Maybe it should be a serif font, like in organic. Oh, it's not even a serif font. Let's actually iterate on this. I'm gonna manually delete 3, 4, and 5. I'm gonna remove this. Okay. And let's ask Claude. So I've removed versions 3, 4, and 5 because I like 1 and 2 more. What I want to see is a team toggle for 1 and 2. Don't bother too much with the toggle. I just want to see the 2 designs at once. Claude, in this case, didn't understood the assignment. It's just moving the components into its own component. So you can actually steer the model in real time, and I can say what I want to see is a toggle between dark and light mode. This is also very interesting. You can see that now we have reached 100k tokens and 79% of the context. And so now we reached something that's called the compaction. So when we reach 80% or so of the context, clients will generally auto-compact the conversation. What's the issue? Each time we send an API call to the model, we send the whole conversation, right? So if you add stuff to the conversation, that conversation grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And once you reach the limit of 80%, to not get worse result, the model summarizes the conversation to a much shorter one so that it can continue to work. So you can see that basically it's stored the goal, the instructions, the discoveries, what has been done, what has not been done, and stuff like that. Okay, all done. So it's now finished. So there should be a toggle to light and dark mode. And let's actually take a look if that's the case. So we have dark mode here, and you toggle it, and this looks like this: light mode, dark mode. Let's see, organic, dark mode. Ooh, I like this thing here. Light mode. You know what? I think I slightly prefer this version here. So let's go with this. Now, in the next episode, we're gonna start building the components that we need for this kind of design and stuff like that. However, we've seen that we have hit the compaction limit, and now we are at 49% context. And as I've said, the context is kind of a precious resource in the agentic world. That's why, for example, skills are sometimes preferred to the MCP. Personally, I still prefer the MCP, especially for the MCP Svelte, because it's not really bloating your context. However, we now build 5 different components, and despite the fact that each component was its own mini word, if we can say, we still used all the context for the main agent, right? And so this brought us to reach the compaction point, have less interesting result for something. Like, this was a problem, right? So it would be nice if we could launch this command here, like design 5 single page news aggregator, but then each one is its own context window, right? Because at the end of the day, those are 5 different tasks basically. So like it's not necessary to use one single task for each one. And you can actually do that. So that's one of the lessons for today. We kind of saw it more or less, because if you take a look at the beginning of the conversation, you can see that it's running the Explorer task in a sub-agent. So what is this sub-agent? A sub-agent is exactly what I was talking about. Is the main agent, this like the chat that you type into, can delegate to another instance of Claude with its own context window to do something. So instead of creating 5 different routes, it can say, hey, please create one route with this design, create one route with this design, create one route with this design. And you can create your own sub-agent in your own client, most likely. In the Svelte team, if we go here, we created a sub-agent for the Claude Code plugin and the Open Code plugin. The AI tools repo is a Claude Code plugin, and it allows you to have the sub-agent, specifically the Svelte file editor sub-agent. So if we go and take a look at the actual code base, you can technically copy and paste the agent in your own configuration if you want. If you do plugins, Claude Svelte, as you can see, you get these agents and the Svelte file editor. Once again, this is basically just a markdown file with a description and with a permission mode. And this is basically like a small file that you can put into your project itself to have the ability to delegate to another agent. So to have this file in your project, in Claude Code, you can do stuff like this. So if I launch this and I do cd stuff news aggregator and I launch Claude, you can do plugin and you can add a marketplace. You can do svelte.js/AI tools, and this will clone the marketplace and it will give you the Svelte plugin. And you can do install for all in the project scope. So if I do plugin now, you can see that I have the Svelte plugin. The Svelte plugin will give you the Svelte MCP, or all the skills and all the sub-agent. Once I restart, if I do skills, I should have Svelte code writer skill, the one that I was talking about before, but you also have the sub-agent, and in Claude Code you can tag a sub-agent. So in this case, we want the Svelte file editor, as you can see. So like this is an agent, and this is basically telling Claude, please use this agent to edit any file. Now we are using Open Code, and to get the same in Open Code, you can use the Open Code plugin. So if you take a look at the Open Code plugin, we need to change our Open Code config. And instead of manually adding the MCP, what we can do is that we can say plugin, and then we can say @svelte.js/opencode. And this will basically include everything. It will include the agents.md, so we can actually empty these agents.md, and we can just use it for the things that we need, because the Open Code plugin will actually give us a specific agents.md specifically for Svelte. So we can delete this one to only fill it with the things that we need in the future. This will also give us the skills, the MCP, and the sub-agent. So if we restart our Open Code, we still have the Svelte MCP connected here, as you can see, but we can now also have, we have our skills, as we said, but now we also have the sub-agent. So let's actually ask once again, I want to build blah blah blah, use the root names. Let's do 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So let's rerun this generation, but now we have the sub-agent at our disposal. And let's see how the things changes. So let me create all 5 designs in parallel using the Svelte file editor agent. So this is the power of sub-agents, and it's the fact that before we basically had to wait a lot of time because each design was created sequentially. So create the one, then create the other one, then create the other one, then create the other one, and each single design filled up our context because every single autofixer call, every single documentation call, everything was added in the main context. Now, instead, we have a lot of sub-agents that actually work in tandem and in parallel to create their own design. So like that's the power of sub-agents. I think sub-agents are something that are very underrated in the AI world. Like I don't see people talk about sub-agents, but the reality is that whenever a task is contained enough that it can be done by a single agent, it should be done in a sub-agent. So you can see that now we have 5 sub-agents, each one in its own context. So we are not filling up our context here. And each one of these new version of Claude is reading the skills, is invoking the MCP server, is writing their own stuff. And each one of these is a fresh copy of Claude that is not constrained by the 80% tokens limit. And you can write a sub-agent very easily in OpenCode, or I'm pretty sure that basically every client supports it. And you can create a sub-agent for basically every task that would consume context, but it's contained enough. So while we wait for this to finish, I just want to show you how you can create a sub-agent in OpenCode, and you can do this, and then you can create agent. And so this, you can create multiple agent, and an agent by itself is just like a mode. You can specify a different system prompt. You can specify some rules, like some tools that have access to, and you can specify a lot of stuff. So for example, one that I really like to use, and I have one specified inside my global OpenCode plugin, is test runner. So if you need to run the test, that's an atomic operation, and it will consume a lot of context because you will get a bunch of logs that they fill up the context. But what you can do is that you can run it in a sub-agent. So you give it a name, and then you can give it a color. So for example, let's say 00FF00, because like test, we like tests that are green. You can give it a description. So like this is invoke this sub-agent whenever you need to execute some test. So this will give a description. You can specify a max number of steps. You can specify a mode. Primary means only the user can choose this manually when it's doing the first prompt. All is that either the agent or the user can do it. Sub-agent is the one that in this case we want, because it's the agent that should create this sub-agent. You can specify a model. So for example, if you want to run the test with a cheaper model, you can specify the model, a different model. You can specify the permissions. So for example, you can say, hey, I want that like you can run bash. You can only run bash. And I think like the permission system in OpenCode, it's a bit weird, but technically you can say stuff like this. Like you can say okay, I want to allow PMPM test, and that's it. Like, this is the only thing that I want to allow for this agent to run. And this will means that if you run this agent, it will not be able to run anything else. I personally like to give subagents, but this is if you want to give it more permissions. And then you can give it a prompt, which is basically what is used to generate the prompt to pass from the agent. Because again, you have to imagine that this is basically Claude invoking a different version of Claude with a prompt. And so you can say, run the test, and if they fail, try to investigate the issue and report back with it. And so by doing this, you are basically creating a compartment where the test can be run without wasting the context in the other part. And you can also pass a custom tools, like if you want to have a way to create a tool specifically, the temperature of 0, it means that the agent is very predictable in what it does. If you have a temperature of 1, instead it's very unpredictable, it's very creative. Basically, this will allow you to not waste your context for operations that are atomic. So I really like this pattern. And let's see if Claude has finished here. As you can see, it's much, we were talking, but it's much better because now we created all 5 designs and we are still at 33% of the context. So before we were like at 78%, 68%. And the moment we asked another thing, it basically completely filled up the context and it had to compact. And so you can see the advantage now. And just for good measure, let's actually go and see what are the designs. We can do /6. Okay, that's over the top. We have 7, again, like a good old terminal. We have 8. This is also pretty interesting, to be fair. I like this kind of design, so we might pick this other one later. Let's see, 9. This is very close to what it already created. I really don't like this. This is also interesting, to be fair. Maybe it's a bit too much. Also, I don't really like the contrast of the dark mode, but I think 8 was also interesting. And the dark mode is also very nice. Okay, so next episode, we're gonna pick one of the design and we're gonna start building our component libraries. So we're gonna set up tests, we're gonna learn how to use Git to see how to validate the agent work. So thank you for following today's episode, and I hope that you learned something. As usual, if you have any question about this project or if you need help in your day-to-day job, feel free to reach out to mainmatter.com. We will be happy to help you build your project. See you in the next episode.